Welcome to r/RedditRevenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story: we prank our nasty supervisor who was joking at us. The second story: I get 5 times more on the same job after my boss fired me. The third story: D-bag took all jobs and got revenge. On to the first story: a tale of revenge on a nasty supervisor, USAF edition. This happened in the mid-80s while I was active duty Air Force. I was a Sergeant E4. My direct supervisor was a T Sergeant E6. This T Sergeant, Rob, not his real name, was a real jerk. He was about 5'10" and a beanpole. He lived on coffee and cigarettes and thinking of ways to bully subordinates. Well, in addition to being a jerk, Rob had a very nasty sense of humor. He could dish it out but couldn't take it. We had these old metal desks with plexiglass covering the tops. He started in on me with supergluing my coffee cup to the plexiglass top. Needless to say, when I went to pick up the cup, everything went everywhere. Of course, the whole office laughed hysterically. I didn't blame them. Nobody wanted to be Rob's target. Next, he moved my car to another parking lot. Right before I called the security police, he told me where my car was. He kept it up. Not just me either, but the whole office. Till one day he went too far. We had just got a new captain assigned to our branch. He was a nice man, quiet, kind, and earned all of our respect. He heard about all the crap Rob pulled and witnessed a few of the milder pranks. Then Rob got nastier. I went out to the parking lot at the end of the day, and my car, a little Civic, was up in blocks. I almost had a stroke. Rob went too far. Granted, the captain made Rob put my tires back on and read him the riot act. Back in the 80s, the atmosphere was much more relaxed, i.e. you could get away with more. The captain and I decided that I should get my revenge. My revenge had to be carefully thought out, and I had to cover my A, as Rob could destroy my career. First, the captain changed my reporting official, Supervisor, to himself. This was to prevent Rob from writing me a horrible or mediocre airman performance report, APR. The timing was important, as Rob had just written my annual report, so the change in reporting official wouldn't trigger another APR. Then I went to the base hospital and got a few letterheads from a friend in the Environmental Health Office. The Environmental Health Office was the office that handled all the reports of STIs and did all the mandatory interviews. I had to swear on my unborn children's heads that this wouldn't get back to them. The captain and I went to work on a letter scheduling a date for Rob to be interviewed as a confirmed contact of someone that was positive with an STI. This was going to hit Rob hard. You see, he thought the world of himself. According to him, he was his wife's master, and he ruled the house and his kids. He never had any other woman but his wife, who, according to him, worshipped the ground he walked on. Also, she wouldn't even leave the house to buy groceries without letting him know, asking permission. I sort of believed him on that one, as she called the office several times a day. Well, the letter was written and placed in the afternoon distribution. The captain made sure he was standing right next to Rob when he opened his official mail. Rob was a creature of habit and always stood right by his distribution tray to read his mail, coffee in cup and cigarette in hand. I was sitting at my desk watching. I swear Rob turned white, and I could hear him say something to the captain. I could see the captain reading the letter Rob handed him, so I moved a bit closer, not a huge office, and heard the captain say, "Well, Rob, have you been horsing around?" Rob, of course, was denying this. Like, really, who would touch him? Yuck. And kept saying, "I can't believe this." It wasn't until a few minutes later when Rob went to grab a phone to call his wife that the captain said, "Wait, Rob." He, the cap, looked at me and said, "Do you think this is enough?" The captain and I both busted out laughing. Everyone in the office was looking around confused and asking what was so funny. Neither the captain or I would tell anyone what was going on. Rob knocked over the distribution boxes, threw his car key, and started having a fit. The captain stopped Rob's fit and basically told him quietly that he deserved what he got, and he ordered Rob to stop with the pranks. Thank God I had thought about changing my reporting official, because Rob would have roasted me. Not much later, I volunteered for an overseas assignment. It seemed the prudent thing to do. My revenge did get around eventually within the upper ranks. It seemed to be a consensus that Rob got what he deserved. The second story is, after you fired me, you must try really hard to get me back. I had an experience with one of the companies I worked for a few years back. They fired me because they thought I wasn't doing anything at all during the day, or at least very little. I was the main system architect and systems administrator. The company had about 100 employees. IT desktop was 8, servers and processing was just me. Going on for already 3 years. Everybody knows that if systems are running smooth, you only have some active monitoring that notifies you when issues might arise, so you can deal with them before they become a real problem. So here comes the new IT manager, and because he didn't see me doing very little during the day, he thought that he gave me my job to the 8-person desktop IT department. They have loads of experience with building, installing, and maintaining desktop systems. They don't have a clue about running the server side of things. They tell the manager that, but if I only seem to work 3 hours a day, in an 8-hour shift, how hard could it be to learn managing those systems? The thing is that I had a contract for 5 years, and I couldn't leave on my own. So the manager asked the board if he was allowed to break up my contract and fire me. The first severance package was too lean and I didn't accept. Without my cooperation, they needed an official approval by a judge to fire me. Europe has pretty good employee protections, and I kept all the systems running, and I was developing new features. That was my primary task, and I didn't fail at that. After the first package, I claimed that I no longer was able to work for them if they didn't think I was doing my job right, so I was going to sue them because they created a hostile work environment for me. 2 days later, I got a much better second package deal, where they almost doubled their first offer. I would get a 50% raise, and would receive a one-time payment for the rest of my contract. Like the person in the story in the video, I had to leave the company the same day. If I wanted to do any harm, I could have done so in the days leading up to this moment. During my employment with this company, I had to turn down some very exciting job offers, because I already had a contract. So I started to contact those companies, and started to work for a couple of them in a sort of freelance capacity. I keep the systems running, monitoring servers for multiple companies, and divide work on new features of the companies. 6 months later, I was contacted by one of the board members of the old company. If I could take a look at the servers because performances dropped dramatically, and IT had a hard time developing and releasing new features. Worse, they had some major downtime due to failed deployments, and restore operations as a result. During my watch, I was able to keep a 100% uptime during the last 2.5 years, because I was able to take a few servers out of service, install the update on those servers, run some deployment tests, and then perform a swap. New servers go live, old servers go down, then the old servers get updated, tested, and then finally added back to the load balance pool. So they asked if I would be willing to return to the company. I asked if the manager that fired me was still working there. Once they confirmed that, I told them no, and told them they could contact me again when that manager was no longer working for them. 2 months later, I got a call that they fired the manager, and what it would take for me to return. So I wrote some demands down. They refused and came with a lower offer. I declined and got back with an offer that was even higher than the first one, and that this was my last and final offer. Later that week, they accepted my second offer. They had very little choice, and I now make 5 times as much money that I did a year earlier, have a yearly wage correction based on inflation on my country plus 7.5% fixed. I also got a much bigger IT budget, and I was allowed to keep managing servers for the companies that I contracted during my freelance period. Most importantly, I only answer to the BOD directly, and my open contract has in writing that they can't place a manager between me and the BOD. It took me 3 months to rectify the damage IT was able to create in only 6 months. Keeping the servers running was the easy part. Correcting all the server code was something different. I went back to the version we had when I left the company, and I rewrote all by myself, and released the new features they developed in 6 months in less than 2 months. We're now almost 2 years further, and things are still running smoothly, and new features are deployed on a regular basis. It's still a one-man show, but on September 2nd, new employees start for me. It's very hard to find a very experienced developer that also has a lot of Windows and Linux administration knowledge. We're running .NET Core under Debian, so within a few weeks an experienced developer starts, and a month later a new system administrator will join us. The company now employs more than 350 people, and having a dependency on a single system administrator/developer is not a good thing. I work 50 to 60 hours a week, but everything over 32 hours is considered overtime and is paid 150%. For me, it doesn't feel like work, but more of a hobby. The last story is, steal all the jobs, micromanage everyone, time for revenge. So I used to work a specialized job in the oil fields. Pay structure was you would get salary plus a job bonus, percentage of the invoice price charged the customer. Basically, the field bonus could be 50% or more of total pay. The work schedule was 15 days on shift, and you were on call 24 hours a day. We had a dispatch that received the calls from our contracting companies, and dispatch would then spread the jobs between all the trucks on call for their shift. Jobs were at least a 3-hour drive from the north shop, and 99% of jobs were further north of here. There was a second shop about 3 hours south that only had 1 crew on call. The north shop would have 3 or 4. Due to all the work being in the north, the south crew would normally wind up being put up on a hotel to be closer to us, either close to the north shop or in the field close to the majority of the jobs. Now, the supervisor of the south crew was a complete D-bag who micromanaged every little detail of his crew, and also was buddies with some of the dispatchers, so he would somehow talk them into giving him almost all the jobs, and justified it by saying it was because they had to be in a hotel away from home, so he wanted to work as much as possible. After a few shifts of not getting any jobs, I figured it was time to do something about this. The job entailed setting up specialized tools that were dropped down a newly drilled oil well, with different sensors that could tell where the oil was and what depth, etc. In order to do this, the truck had a drum of wire, armored cable with conductor cables running down the center 3,000 to 8,000 meters long. At the end of the cable was a cable head, basically a way to connect the weight of the tools to the exterior armor and have the conductor cables connect to the electrics of said sensors. Now the ProRevenge. I actually didn't live close to the shop myself, so when I was on shift I would live out of the bunk in the truck. So this meant I was always at the shop where the trucks were parked, while waiting to be called out. Now this is also where Super D's micromanaging comes into play as well. The cable head had to be rebuilt every X amount of jobs, and since he didn't trust anyone on his crew, he always did it himself. A badly built cable head could mean shorts in the conductor cables. So when he would be fresh back from a job and head to the hotel, I sprang to work, opening up the cable head and nicking a bit of insulation off of a data wire and putting it back together. And when Super D would do a test before heading out to a job and discover his tools not receiving data back, he would have to pass the job to the next truck in line, as we cannot let our customers wait. Rebuilding a cable head takes about 2 hours. It was easy to diagnose, the fault being a short in the wire. First step is to always check the cable head, as this is most likely the culprit, and a short being caused by a faulty build. Seeing as Super D never let anyone else rebuild the cable head, since he thought he was better than everyone along with being a micromanager, it would seem as if it was his own fault. The 3-hour drive was just the beginning of the job. Rigging up, setting up tools was another hour if all goes smooth. Then at least 4 hours runtime to log, collect data. Then either 3 hours back to shop or maybe do another job. That's not accounting for any specialty tools that they may want to run. I've been on jobs for upwards of 72 hours, with maybe a couple of naps. Then maybe another job pops up if it's busy, and you start the clock all over again. Yes, it pays well, but it comes with a lot of sacrifice. I worked that job for 3 years and was at home for about 6 months of those 3 years. Also, being in the middle of nowhere and living off of microwave food, energy drinks, and coffee. Since he insisted on always doing it himself, he could not get mad at his crew. He was the supervisor and would be sent back to his own shop, since it was not worth keeping them in a hotel to wait for the next job to come up. Once he didn't get any jobs for 2 months, I stopped until he would try to take all the work again. Then I would spring into action again. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and have a great day.